Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. Austin Linney here, and I have the honor, now the pleasure of having Mr. Happy Jack Yoga here. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing amazing. How you doing, Austin?
I'm doing good, man. So this is interesting. So you're definitely the first yoga instructor I've had on the show. Yes, you did it. You made it. It's all done. You don't even have to just forget your goals for next year. You're good.
Yes.
But the genesis behind you coming on, besides that you're an amazing light in this world, but more importantly, I come on to one of you and Leland's calls. It's how we met. And I love the energy, and there was a vibe there and kind of what you preach. And I just love this because that's what this podcast is about, is creating the space for people to be themselves and for people to, really take those turns in their life to the positive. Right? Because that's what we're after, is the positive in the thing. But what I like to do on this show, because everybody has a different story, is I like to let them start the story where they want to start it. And then we go from there. That I let the guest pick, and then we just go from there. So
I love it. That sounds perfect, man. Well, like you said, I'm so happy I get to be the first yoga teacher on your podcast. But I'll tell you, that was not always the case. Yes, have been teaching yoga for about 10 years, have a business. However, before that, man, I was going down a different path. A big part of my path was trying to prove to my dad that I was good enough. For whatever reason, self-worth, trying to get his approval. So I studied engineering to make my dad proud. And I got an MBA to make my dad proud. I worked for John Deere, a little company in Iowa. Lived in Iowa for a couple of years. Great company. But man, it just wasn't my passion. Because of that, I started heading down a lot of, bad paths. Anyways, long story, I'll get into that later. Eventually found yoga and was like, this is it. This is how I want to spend my life. Like not just sitting in a cubicle, right, designing some tractors, but actually being able to connect with people and help people. And man, it's saved my life. And now every single day I jump out of bed at 4:30 in the morning. I can't wait to meditate, to practice yoga, to move my body, to breathe. And that's, you talk about designing your life. This is my 40th year, just turned 40, just celebrated 11 years of sobriety.
Yes.
But, I'm not here to preach that everybody needs to be sober, but it definitely was the right decision for me. Mm-hmm. And man, now I'm excited looking into my 40s about designing the rest of my life.
And I think ultimately, there is interesting and in the correlation. So in 3 weeks, I will have been sober for 2 years.
That's awesome.
I've lost about 65 pounds, 8 pant sizes. So a lot of versions of myself. And I was talking to somebody the other day about their sobriety. Very interesting. There is a craving, right, for the drug abuse or the alcohol that is very intoxicating. And I think one of the fears of quitting drinking is that that'll never go away. But the reason I love how you're so excited to go to bed, I'm so excited to do life every day. I myself launch myself out of bed, and there's a different side of the coin when you reach that other side that I think people need to hold on to. That is really what you're after.
Absolutely. First of all, huge congrats on losing 65 pounds. I would, like, people wouldn't know it, right? I meet you now, you're like, there's no way. I'll tell you what, dude, I lost 100 pounds.
Whoa.
I was over 250 pounds, obviously going down a wrong path with that. And same thing, man. But to your point about the sobriety, and again, like, I don't preach yoga to people. I'm vegan, but I don't push people on being vegan. Lots of people I know enjoy a glass of wine. But it was the right decision for me. And I'll tell you, I tried quitting smoking lots of times. I tried quitting drinking lots of times. But when it actually happened, like, something clicked. And I was like, man, I was just sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And I remember just making a decision. And when that decision was made, like my identity shifted. I decided, I took my Crown Royal, poured it down the sink, got rid of the cartons of cigarettes. I remember 3 weeks into sobriety, I was telling my family and my friends, I'm like, this is it. I'm done. It's been 3 weeks. Like, I'm done. You know, they would laugh at me. They're like, yeah, right. Like, good for making it 3 weeks. That's like, you've never done that. But I just knew, man. And it was so certain. I didn't have to wait until I got to 1 year or 2 years or 10 years. Like, it was just like, this is it. You couldn't pay me. Like, dude, you couldn't pay me to go back to that. There's no way.
Your story is so similar because I have a very military mind. When I make a decision, when I quit hard drugs, I just quit. And so, like, one of the reasons I haven't shared a lot of my story, because I didn't go 12 steps. I didn't do it the way everybody else did. So I didn't feel like my story mattered. But what I'm finding out as I coach people in recovery and dive deeper into that world, there's a lot of people that don't like the way that 12 steps are done, or just not loving the negativity around it. So they're actually clinging on to my story. And so the more I share, the more it helps, because dude, you're 100% right. I quit for 26 days, had a drink, and I got mad. I waited a month. I started again. And when I hit 60 days, I was done. I was like, I'm done. And I haven't even thought about it one day over since then. It was so weird.
That's amazing, dude. And actually, I had no idea. Like, we didn't really know each other coming into this conversation. We're just like, feel the vibe. Let's do it. I had no idea you were sober. Maybe you didn't meet me. I don't know. But man, I've never met anybody that said this, but I'm the same. I went and tried AA. And by the way, I've got nothing bad to say about it. Like, millions of people have gotten sober and saved their life from AA. The power to you. I love that. When I went there, I guess 11, 12, whatever I was, I tried it. My experience was, I went into a basement of a church and we're sitting in a circle, and it was low energy. And the conversation was like, this sucks. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun. But if we stick together, we can do this, and I'm sure there probably are some upbeat, positive AA groups out there. I'm sure they must exist. But my experience was not that. And then, like, when I made that decision, there is no sense of deprivation. I'm not missing out on anything. Like, I get to do exactly what I want to do. I get to consume whatever I want to consume, and it's just not this. So, but I've never heard. I'm really happy to hear.
Well, what's interesting, right? And you'll love this because we're going to have you speak in it for sure. So I have a mentor who is the greatest human ever. He's 76. He skis and hikes like he's 16. I mean, seriously, like, he started a charity called One Life Fully Lived. It's to help kids with financial literacy, because he believes that entrepreneurship is not taught in school, and it does a lot of different things for inner city kids. But we actually, his family's had some troubles with addiction and so on, lost his sister. And not by him happenstance, but a lot of people in recovery have been drawn to his group. Well, what's happened is that group is now spawned off to a group we're creating for a mastermind for recovery. And the theme of the group is, and all these guys went to 12 steps, but they want, some of them I coach, they want something different. So the theme is, we don't want to survive, we want to thrive.
Nice.
And my only issue with some of that negative victim space of recovery is they're not teaching the afterlife. Like, you're just, one of the best things I've ever heard, it might have been on Joe Rogan, I don't remember, but it was a bulimic Olympiad athlete that said she went to 12 therapists. And the first talk she ever had, they were like, let's talk about your childhood. Let's talk about your childhood. And she goes, listen, you SOBs, I'm trying to get to Tuesday. Like, I'm trying not to kill myself. What can you give me now? And she's like, in a year from now, we'll operate in the space of, I'm worried about my childhood. How do I live for now? And when I heard that, it changed the entire way I coach, because ultimately the only thing you're going to get from looking in your past, you have to address it, but you're going to get a crick neck. And so let's focus on the now. Let's focus on the positive, and let's build you up in a space mentally where you can attack your past. But you have to get to a place emotionally first where you can handle it without, like, fear.
Yeah, no, it's a great distinction. And I mean, really, even just looking at it, like, coaching is about helping people move forward, right? It's like from where you are moving forward to whatever it is you want to create. I mean, therapy is about like where you are and looking in the past. And I'm not a qualified therapist, and I'm sure like they can do some great work. I haven't had to use it myself. But it's a great distinction that you make, that, you know, with coaching, it's not about going back there. It's about right here. Let's go forward.
Well, what's interesting is you're not going to believe this. It's about to get creepy for the universe.
Yeah.
So one of the chains that I had to break in my life, and I could tell you where I was and when it happened, was I was buying rental properties to make my dad happy.
Is that right? Eh?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we? It's like I hear that. Here's the thing with me. Like I went down that path for most of my life to make my dad proud, doing all these things. Finally, you know, discover yoga, and it's like, this is it. Now I know who I am. Now I know what I want, my messages for the world. So I don't know, 5 years into being a yoga teacher, and it's going really well. I mean, I'm traveling the world. I've taught yoga in 30 plus countries, you know, getting to meet amazing people. And I remember coming back home, you know, small town Canada here. And, you know, I'm out with my dad. We're splitting some firewood, because that's when I'm doing something he wants to do. He's a little more open to, you know, have a conversation. So we're doing some work for him. And I just, you know, subtly say, I'm like, hey, Dad, you know, what do you think about this yoga? Like it turned out pretty good, right? Like I get to travel the world, all this good stuff. And he's like, well, Jack, you don't own a house. You don't own a car. You don't have a family. I have all those things now. At the time I didn't. And in the past, I would have reacted, you know, got into a debate. But what I got from him was actually he just cares. He just wants me to be safe. Yep. He wants me to be secure. From his generation, he believes that a house and a car and a phone and a family is what you need. Then you've made it. So when I was able to, instead of like getting into an argument, like, okay, he just loves me and wants the best for me, but I know where I'm going. And now I've done that plus much more. You know, it helped me.
Well, I think ultimately, right, is that, you know, and it took me so long to understand that there's humans that are parents, meaning like my parents are humans, right? And they got parented by somebody that had emotions and feelings that were directed at them a certain way, in the society difference, right? And it's really odd, right? I have a friend I've known since I was like 15, and he like, it was probably like 7 months ago. He said, listen, I knew you were going to be successful. I always knew that you were going to get it figured out. But he said, there's something different in your eye right now. Like your eye says to me that you're firm in who you are, and nobody, regardless of anything like father, mother, brother, sister, is gonna affect that. But it took so much work. It took so much destruction. It took so much alcoholism, abuse, and moving and divorce and all these things. But when you tap into that and you can see your significant others, your parents, as people that can make mistakes, then I had a mentor. I have a mentor who's in Hawaii, and he's very tapped into whatever. Like he's just an interesting cat, very deep. And he said, Austin, when you can walk around in this universe and you can realize that everybody is hurting from something, then you can have compassion in your heart. And when you have compassion in your heart, then you won't be triggered by their emotional response to you. And it was really the thing that allowed me to like put down my swords, right? Yeah. And I'm sure you felt the same way with your dad when that conversation was happening.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. And I find though, it starts with ourselves. Like, yeah, it's beautiful when we can have compassion for others and understanding for others and an acceptance for others. But I'll tell you, when that acceptance, like we fully accept ourselves, I mean, that's what yoga has given me. You know, I've done a lot of yoga teacher trainings around the world. I remember specifically the second teacher training I did, it was in Austin, Texas. And I went down there. It was like a 7-day immersion. Halfway through the program, it's Wednesday night, 10 p.m. And our teacher says, everybody get on your mats. We're going to practice. And we're like, dude, it's like 10 o'clock at night. Isn't it bedtime? But anyways, we get on our mats. We did a 2-hour yoga practice of all hip openers. And for those who don't know, that's just like, these poses where you get into your hips and it's like very intense. So now it's midnight and our teacher says, everybody find a partner, sit cross-legged, face-to-face up close. And then the lights went off. And he said, you now have 10 minutes each to share your deepest, darkest secrets.
Oh.
And we're like, whoa, like we didn't expect this, right? But it's a yoga teacher training, right? It's confidential. It's, we're here to do the work. We're very open because we just did 2 hours of hip opening. And I team up with this girl, Carrie from Seattle. I didn't know her before. We're now great friends. And I'm like, wow, deepest, darkest secrets. Well, one, I was an out of control alcoholic, thankfully sober now. But, that's one thing I don't really talk about much. Used to abuse a lot of stupid drugs. I'd like to hear more about your journey too, Austin. But for me, it's like crack cocaine, crystal meth, like nonsense like that whenever I get drunk.
Yes.
That kind of stuff. Then I cheated on my wife, something I'm not proud of, not the man I am today, my first wife that I did. And then something else, though, that came up in that moment was that when I was 16, I had a sexual experience with another guy. Mm-hmm. I completely suppressed that. Like I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I hadn't thought of it for like 15 years, but like this memory had been suppressed, and all of a sudden it came up and I shared it. Mm-hmm. And then anyways, Carrie shares back her deepest, darkest secrets. And then the rest of the night we go into a noble silence, which means nobody can talk. Like, so I'm go back to my room. I'm laying in my bunk bed, staring at the ceiling, like all these emotions and memories came back. The next day we're eating breakfast in silence. Of course, eventually we could speak, but I'll tell you, that was one of the most liberating, freeing experiences of my life, to be able to share my deepest, darkest secrets and be like, yeah, I know I'm not proud of everything I've done, but instead of beating myself up and holding it onto it and suppressing it down, like being able to let it go, like, hey, this is me, this is what I've done, does not define who I am now. Bring it back to coaching, does not have to define who I'm going to be going forward when I meet my now wife and all this other good stuff. So I'll tell you, that's what's possible from yoga. That's why I'm so jacked about it. And it sounds like it fits in really well with the work you do.
Well, this is weird, and I think the universe puts schedules. Long story short, because my coaching clients have confidential, I signed my new coaching client. We had our first call last night, and he's got nothing to that extent. By the way, thank you for sharing that, first of all, before I continue. It's beautiful. But he's got 2 stories that he's holding on to, that's holding him back from living his best life. And he knows it. And he has never shared it. And this is something, I want to share something with you because it's important and it matters right now. So I had my friend on, and his podcast got released today. And he's got a 3-year-old son. And he sent me this message. And if you think that the podcasts aren't important, this is what he said to me. I just listened to our chat, and I want to thank you for creating an immortal piece of my story. It makes me happy to know that if anything were to happen to me, my son will have a little piece of me out there about my story and the things that drive me. And you can't put a price tag on the value that you've created for my family.
Wow. That's amazing.
And I do a mastermind event. We just did our first one. And the reason that this platform was created was for people to share their story. And mainly for me to share my story, to show you that it's okay, and to give other people a license. But the tactical talk behind this is that if you're holding these things in your life, right, drug addiction or sexual misdeeds or whatever you want to call them, bankruptcy or whatever the fuck, boss that you did something nasty to, when you hold these things as I describe it, in a closet with the lights off, it controls every aspect of your life, whether or not you think it does or not. And when I meet people for the first time, I say homeless, drug addict, alcoholic, divorced. Nice to meet you. Because what it does is like, dude, this guy is like super vulnerable, but it allows them to drop down a peg. But when I do that for myself, it also allows those things, the shame associated. And see, that's the recovery part of it that people don't talk about. It's a shame cycle that you're just shaming yourself over and over again with the same story. And it's so hard to get out of it. But until you get it off your chest, until you don't let it own you anymore, you can't, it will control you.
Absolutely. And the reality is, Austin, for every single one of us, we've got more adversity coming. Like even though, you and I, we've cleaned up our lifestyle, like none of that nonsense necessarily is going to happen, but we're going to lose loved ones, whether it's parents, people we know, like that kind of stuff is going to happen. And so just being able to navigate those challenging times, you know, I remember, I guess it was 7 years ago now, I got a one-way ticket to Finland. My mom is originally from Finland, and I wanted to connect with my culture. So I was there, I was teaching yoga, I was playing music, you know, doing my thing. I'd just been in Helsinki, Finland for 1 month, and I got diagnosed with cancer. Totally didn't expect that, right? Like I'm happy Jack. I'm a vegan, right? I'm here. I'm drinking my green juice. I'm a yogi, doing all this right stuff, and I get this diagnosis. But I'll tell you what, in that moment that I found out, as crazy as it sounds, I felt gratitude. I was like, you know what? I've already been through so much in my life with the alcohol, the drugs, the divorce, the obesity, losing 100 pounds. I knew I was going to be okay. It was testicular cancers. You know, I knew I was going to be okay. And the cool thing was, I recorded a YouTube video that day, and it's, you know, it's on YouTube. And I said, even if my life were limited, even if I had 6 months left to live, I wouldn't change a thing about my life. I wouldn't do anything differently. So that was pretty cool validation. You want to talk about constructing your life, to be able to feel that. But I'll tell you what, you know, I had to take care of it. So I came back home here to Toronto, and I had cancer, or essentially for 1 month before the tumor was removed. That 1 month was one of the greatest months of my life. You know, I got to come back, see family who I hadn't seen in a while, did a great course on life coaching, got to meet a nephew who had just been born, boom, you know, tumor removed. And in 1 month back in Finland, connecting with family, doing what I love. But I'll tell you, before I found this lifestyle, these practices, I would have had stress and anxiety and feared for the worst and overwhelmed, all that. But that's the beautiful thing, I believe, about the work that we get to do, whether with all the demons that we faced and overcame, it just sets us up so that, hell, you tell me I got cancer, let's do this. I got it, you know, and whatever else is coming for all of us.
No, absolutely amazing perspective. And, you know, I think that's the ticket, right? And, you know, one of my battle cries is like, you have a choice every day. And something I live off with my thing is like, ultimately, like, what are the daily tasks, right, that you can do that if you did those things, then you would win the day, right? And ultimately, like, look, we're not in a universe where problems are going to go away. And ultimately, like, problems are how you handle them. So you see the cancer as a springboard, you know, to attack this thing head on. And so one of the things that's interesting, and people think I'm crazy, but I love to go in business with people in recovery, because there's no quit in those, and they don't view problems as the same as other people. You're like, dude, true story. And I'll be honest with you. Anytime somebody tries to bring me their drama or bullshit, they're causing some BS. I'm like, guys, I stayed up for 10 days straight. I lost 30 pounds. I'm not being involved in this conversation. It's not worth it. Like, I've already been to this bullshit place. I'm not going back here. And so I just won't be a part of it. Like, because I am like the way, and it's really odd. And I think everybody has something they hold on to. I think everybody like grabs onto a word or a saying or like a picture, right? And for me, I told myself 2.5 years ago that you're a speeding train of positivity and optimism. And anybody that gets in your way is going to get run the fuck over. And so that's what I am. And I'm not gonna play the victim, because I played a victim for 20 years. I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
And so if you want to jump on and you want to become a solution-based person, then I'm happy to have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna sit here and blame everybody else. It's not gonna work. It doesn't work for me.
Absolutely. And that's why it's important for all of us to decide who we surround ourselves with. You know, I mean, Tony, lots of people say it, right? The 5 people you spend the most time with is essentially who you become. So our family, mom, dad, whoever, like, love our family, even if they challenge us, but our peers, right? Our friends, people. That's why I'm on the phone with Leland all the time. As crazy as it sounds, I've never told him this. Maybe he'll hear this one day. I would probably connect. I would consider him like my best friend, in the sense that, and even though like we've only met in person a couple times, but we're on a conversation like multiple times a week, strategizing, masterminding, finding solutions, and I here in small town Canada, I love where I live, but I don't really have a whole lot of people in close proximity that I can hang out with and really high vibe mastermind. Sure. So, it's so important, and there's no excuse, right? It's not about the lack of resources. It can only be a lack of resourcefulness. So now I get to connect with Leland through a Tony Robbins event. Now we're in business together, and that's what it's all about.
Well, I have some good news for you. One of my coaching clients is a young stud. He lives in Toronto, and we're having a mastermind, one of my mastermind events in Toronto in September, and we're going to have you speak at it.
Cool.
So we're going to do a whole mastermind weekend. How much fun is that going to be? So
I love that.
Yeah, because, ultimately, like, I can sit here and talk metaphysical and all that stuff forever, but I want to talk a little bit of business here. As you're growing up, you have a great name, and I've seen your Instagram, I've seen your brand. To entrepreneurs out there, to new investors, or just people in general that are, a lot of my listeners maybe are getting their real estate license, or they're a new investor, or they're in a 9-to-5 and they're looking for a way out. I would imagine when you found yoga, you didn't expect it to be what it is now, right? Where you're coaching, training, you created this global brand. So ultimately, tell us, kind of break down, was the vision of where you are now set in the beginning, or did it grow with the movement?
Totally. Great question. Totally grew. I mean, just to back up a little bit, when I did that first yoga teacher training, I was like, holy shit, this is it. This is how I want to spend my life. So I come back from Hawaii. I was living in Calgary at the time, come back home, get my parents on the phone. I'm like, guess what? I'm quitting John Deere. I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to teach yoga. And my parents, they did have some good advice. They're like, Jack, okay, awesome that you found yoga. Awesome you're sober. But let's get real for a sec. Like you're going through a divorce right now. Like, why don't you finalize that, get that wrapped up? You're working on your MBA still, like finish your education. I still had some student loans from engineering, pay off your student loans. So they had some good, logistical advice. And so I took that 1.5 years where I was still working for John Deere, but, teaching yoga on the side and just, and taking a whole bunch of trainings and just, building that muscle. But I knew the time would come. And of course, eventually it did. When the time came, then I got one-way ticket to India, and that's a whole nother story. But to answer your question about like, did I have the vision right up front, or did it grow? Like, for sure it grew. I remember sitting in a hotel room in Vancouver with Carrie, the girl from The Deepest, Darkest Secrets. We met up in Vancouver, and we were creating our vision. And I remember thinking like, wow, if I could lead like 2 or 3 yoga retreats per year, if I could like live in my small town in Canada and 2 or 3 times go to like Mexico or something, that would be like then I've made it. And I mean, now we've done, sometimes we do the monthly, Bali, India, Mexico, Peru, Costa Rica, Finland, Spain. I mean, you name it, around the world. So it's hugely grown. Actually, the other thing I'll share, when I first came back from that yoga teacher training, I thought that the thing to do would be to open a yoga studio. Okay. To have a physical location, because it just seemed like that's how, like, as you climb become a yoga teacher, eventually you create a studio. But I took my business background. I wrote a 55-page business plan on opening this yoga studio, right? Like working out. Here I am at John Deere. Hope they're not listening. Working at John Deere, working on my business plan, and but ultimately I realized I didn't want to be in one spot, grounded in one spot. I wanted the freedom, right, to be able to travel and do my thing. So I guess it's I'm jumping around, but totally it evolved. And the other thing I remember saying to Carrie is, I guess I'm going to have to give up traveling. I guess I'm never going to travel business class again. So not that John Deere paid for business class, but sure. I flew so much that I was able to upgrade sometimes. They're like, oh, hey, I got business class. Man, I fly business class way more now as a yoga teacher. Yes, from upgrades, sometimes paying, because so much more successful. Because doing what I love, but to your point about addicts being hard workers, It's about doing the work. I incorrectly used to say to people, hey, if you do what you love, then you're going to be successful. That's not the whole truth. Like, yeah, you got to do what you love, but you got to freaking put the work in. You got to be relentless. You got to do what it takes. So, and that's, it's been 10 years now, basically, since getting into yoga, and man, just kicking ass and loving it.
No, I love that. And what's interesting is one of the things I'm kind of hitting the head on right now, and I would love for your take on this, is I think too many people see a business, right, or see an investment strategy, whether it be Airbnb or a yoga business or so on and so on, but they don't understand the aspects of the amount of taxing energy that business attaches to their lifestyle. So until you figure out the lifestyle that you want to create, right, then you can know what way to invest or business wise. And what I mean by that is like right now, because this is what I do, is the Airbnb business is a shiny object, right? Everybody sees the money, that it's cool, but they don't understand that you're running a hotel, basically. So, you need to be available at 24/7. So if your idea is that you want to get away, it's not really the business to invest in, but people don't look at it from that point of view. And so, ultimately, like, I think, I love that your parents said, well, hold on, because that's me. I want to sound off the alarms. I've got it. Let's do it. And ultimately, I think we need to take a little pause sometimes and kind of vet out, what it really looks like on paper.
Right. And get clarity. Like that's what I feel so blessed now that I'm just so damn clear. This is my mission. This is our mission. This is what I'm going to do, because we're going to get setbacks. We're going to have those days. I remember, I don't even think I've shared it like on a podcast or anything publicly, but I'm happy to now. I remember we were leading a yoga retreat in a yoga training in Bali. This is a bunch of years ago. And, this is when I was just getting started. So like wasn't thriving financially yet. And in fact, I was upside down. I remember like I had 2 credit cards maxed out. Like I'm talking, it might've been like $70,000 or $80,000 in the wrong direction. I'd have to think about how I even got there, but it was a huge amount of money. A bunch of personal development I had paid for, and right before going on this Bali training, and then I end up getting sick. So like physically, I'm depleted. Now I got to fly. Like my flight was from here to New York to Frankfurt to South Korea, spend Christmas Day in South Korea airport, and then get to Bali. And I'm just like physically like not feeling it, and upside down financially. But then. The students start arriving and we start doing the work and we start getting real. And man, by the end of that training, like we over delivered, we kicked ass, enrolled so many of the students there into their next step, was able to get back on track financially. I guess I just share this because as an entrepreneur, right, it's easy to see you now, Austin, right? You got these properties, you got this business, it's amazing. But I'm sure there was some learning along the way. There were some, mistakes made along the way, and we still have to show up and do the work. Sure. And know what we're going towards, no matter what's thrown our way.
Yeah, we lost 26 grand last year at a business we started. It's the first time I ever lost money in real estate. And there was like 2 days where I was just like, I was just beating myself senseless, right? Like you're one opportunity, like it's whatever. And then I called a friend and he said, I'm going to ask you a quick question. He said, did you graduate college? I said, nope, dropped out 3 times. Do you have your MBA? Nope. He said, have you ever started a business like that before and ran it? Nope. He goes, well, then just consider that you just went to business school. Perfect. You're good. And it was like, it just shifted right then. And it was like, and see, what's crazy is people don't understand is I got divorced this year, had to give up a house. I took on all the debt from the marriage because, and then I got laid off. Like, so, I mean, it hasn't been roses, but I tell you what, and this is what I will say, is I think that ultimately these tests, right? These things that happen in our life, or almost, as I say that to me, at least for me, they're a universal check to see how bad you want it.
Yes.
Like I feel like it's like, do you really want it? are you committed or are you interested? Right. Somebody, so one of the guys says that. And so like every time when it's about to go sideways, like something happens and it's like your belief is tested. Like, because the way I view it is this, I wrote this a while back because I always walk and run my first workout in the morning at like 5 a.m. I do 2 workouts a day. Like I'm kind of like a machine. It's really odd. But what I did is like, it was really dark one day and I put on Instagram, like sometimes you have to walk down the hallway without knowing where the door and the lights are.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately in business, sometimes you have to have a little more belief, call it naivete, whatever you want to call it. But sometimes if you talk to like really successful people, they're like, maybe I just didn't know any better at first. Right.
Absolutely. You got to have faith, man. I'd like to ask you a question because you're a coach. I'm a coach. You're a coach. And I'll be real and vulnerable in this. Like I get great results, and like you and I, we're freaking driven. Like we do the work. Like Leland consults me. I do what he says. Like like I do it. I put the work in.
Yeah.
I get the results. My experience is most people are not wired this way. So I can have a coaching client, and we have this session together, and it's so clear. They're lit up. They come up with the ideas. They commit to all this stuff.
I got it.
And then they don't do it. And I'm like,
I got it. You ready? And here's what's crazy. You ready for this? This is why the universe is nuts. I just finished a book 2 days ago that will explain this entire thing. I'm not kidding. Look.
Nice. What to say when you talk to yourself.
I truly believe this. I have read north of 200 or 300 books. I truly believe that that's the most important book I've ever read. And I will explain to you why. So there is a scientific fact that motivation leaves you in the moment. So that's why you can go to a Tony Robbins event and then 3 days later, you're back to where you were. Because ultimately what the issue is that the subconscious programming of the thoughts that are in our head are in direct reflection of our actions. And if you're, as a kid, if you're told no a bunch, you believe that no is the only option, or that is the limiting belief. So what this book explains is that daily affirmations, there's an app called Think Up. Think Up, it's free. You record your own affirmations and it plays back your own voice to you with music behind it. It's fantastic.
Nice.
And he says that, okay, I'll give you the best example I can. Let's say you want to stop smoking. You don't put the cigarette out right away. You say to yourself, I am healthy, I do not smoke. I am healthy, I do not smoke. And you say that for 30 days. And then at some point, you wake up and you're like, why do I have the cigarette in my hand? I don't smoke. Because the thing is this, your subconscious doesn't know the difference between reality and real, or fake and real. So you might as well just tell it what you want, and then it believes it. Well, if it's programmed in your subconscious, well, then it acts as your internal motivation mechanism. And when your internal motivation mechanism is positive, then that can back up the effort. And so ultimately with my coaching clients, we're almost, a lot of the times they get frustrated because they're like, dude, you're like beating me up. And I'm like, no, I'm tearing you down to make sure that we're building you up the right way, that the goals are for you. And so ultimately what I'm understanding is that as they go into learning more about the brain, neuroplasticity and all that stuff like that, this is the game changer. This is the rewiring of so I can get way technical because this is the only stuff I care about. But ultimately, you have 2 synapses on your brain. And the more and more that you say these things, the more and more these things get closer to connecting. So if you were to say, I am a piece of shit, nobody likes me, the farther and farther that gets there, it's going to connect and it's just going to be your automatic thought. And so this is what I've thought about drinking and bad eating, is that it's not that it's on your consciousness. It's that it's so rooted in who you are that it's rooted in your subconscious. And so you do these things without even thinking about it. And so that's where I think this is like the next level of the brain training. Yeah,
that's so good. I mean, and I think about for myself, like, I mean, my nickname is Happy Jack. I'm this positive guy. By the way, I got the nickname But when I was a kid, my parents said as a baby, as a child, I mean, I was always smiling. I was always happy. They called me Happy Jack. And then as I got older, went to school, whatever, I got bullied, got teased, whatever stuff kind of happens, start putting up those walls, probably telling myself those things, just like you said, connecting those wrong affirmations, and started losing that shine, put on the weight. For me, then when I found yoga, started pulling away all those layers and, got back to being happy again, I was like, this is it, Happy Jack Yoga. Mm-hmm. But then I found, as I was traveling around the world, I was putting pressure on myself. I was putting pressure that everywhere I went, I had to be this over the top, super inspirational, super happy guy. Thankfully, I am most of the time. I mean, that is my nature, who I am. But what I also learned is being real, being authentic. So if I'm going through something, not dumping and venting, but being able to be real. And then from that place, taking it up from there. But, I think that's so good what we tell ourselves. Like before I go work out, like when I'm working out, I mean, I'm like you, man, I do it every day. And when I'm doing it, I'm not saying things like, oh, when is this going to end? Oh, how much longer? Like I'm saying, I love this. With every rep, I get stronger. With every rep, I have more energy. This is fun. Like I'm saying the things that I want to feel. And then it is. And then like, it's so much more enjoyable. And I believe that's what I'm actually conditioning, right? Is these new versus I'm tired and when is this over?
Well, I think there's two important factors. And I just heard an interview with Tim Ferriss and Jerry Seinfeld that were fantastic because he was talking about writing, right? Creativity. I love the creative arts. And even though I just get like strings of consciousness, but he said that you have to put a time limit on it. And so I think a lot of people, and I'm going to tie this all together, is that ultimately, if you want to work out, like put 30 minutes on it and like, just go for 30 minutes. And like, then you have like a buffer, you're stopping, it's not like this endless thing. But something I heard from a big investor that's super important, and it's kind of what I live by, is ultimately when you start working out or you need to have metrics that you're following so you can hit the little wins. Ultimately, what I'm trying to embody is I don't really care about how much weight I can bench or like how much weight I left. But what I'm trying to do is I want to create the lifestyle that I am a healthy person and I work out every day.
Yeah.
And that's the switch. And so when you switch it, then your mood doesn't waver on pounds and weights. It's just, this is who I am.
Yeah. And it's a non-negotiable. I was out with a couple of guys on the weekend on Saturday. Very rare. Like I just like, man, most of the time I'm just like here doing my thing. I'm a workaholic. No longer an alcoholic. I'm a bit of a workaholic. Anyways, Saturday, get together with these guys. They're a little bit newer on the journey, a lot newer, I should say, on the journey than us. And when I was telling them, they're like, Jack, what's your morning routine? And I'm like, I'm up at 4:30, doing my lemon water. I'm doing my meditation. I'm doing my journaling. I'm doing my yoga. I'm doing my fitness. I'm reading. Like I schedule time to read and consume, inspiring content. And they were like, holy shit, man, this feels like a boot camp. Like I wouldn't want that. But as I thought about it, like everything I'm doing, like it's not, when my alarm goes off at 4:30, never, I mean, in the past was different, but now like there's no resistance. I'm like, I can't wait to get up. Like I can't wait. And I
got a better thing for you. Here's the thing. This is what we didn't realize we did, but it's actually a good thing. So all my coaching clients say that they can't stand my Instagram because they know that every morning I'm going to post that bad boy at 5:15, 5:30. I'm out there working out already. And they're like, you are a machine, right? But something I realized, if I'm going to truly lead, right? Same as you as a coach, we don't have an option. Because who would we be if we didn't practice what we preach, correct? Totally. And so ultimately, maybe as people who are in former recovery, maybe we need that accountability as coaches. Even though we love what we do, it is kind of a secret weapon of accountability, if you think about it.
It absolutely. And I think it really comes down to like how we got to get clear. What is our outcome? What is the result we want? Right. So these guys I was chatting with, all great guys, we had great conversations, but they're like, they would say things like, well, I like to see what my body needs that day. Maybe I need yoga, maybe I need meditation, maybe fitness. And I say, okay, well, let's look at the past month. In the last 30 days, how many times did you give yourself a practice and they're not doing it, right? There's no consistency. So I'm not saying everybody's got to do the exact same thing, but we've got to decide what are the practices that nourish us, that, to your point, align with their identity, right? Of somebody that's healthy, somebody that works out every day, and then create a system that's going to support that. And if you and I obviously have created something that works, but if somebody is not getting the results and they're not feeling good and they don't have the energy, I think it would be worthwhile to be open to try something different.
100%. And to take it even a step farther, because I have a friend who manages a bunch of money and he's a marathon runner. We're about to have a session next Monday. Is I've scheduled out the books I'm going to read and listen to for the entire year, because I will sometimes be in between books and take a day and a half to find a new one. And I don't want that. I want to have my stuff scheduled because I think in society that we've created decision fatigue. You go to Starbucks and they ask you what 7 milks you want, and I don't care. Just make the damn coffee. So I think as entrepreneurs, I think we make too many decisions in a day. And so if we don't set ourselves up for success, we're setting ourselves up for failure. We're putting booby traps in our life.
Totally. And I love how you mentioned decision fatigue. You see this shirt, Happy Jack Yoga? Dude, I wear this shirt. I've got 6 or 7 of them. This shirt every day. I got the same Lululemon shorts or pants, all black, same shirts. And I'm not saying everybody's got to do that. And sure, some people, they love style and go for it. Yeah, of course, if I go out, I can dress up. But man, I don't have to think. In fact, like my assistant, she's got my clothes there ready to go for tomorrow morning. So at 4:30, I wake up. It's like, there's my supplement, there's my clothes. Dude, there's no decisions, man. I just get into action.
I just had this conversation with my coaching client this morning. Just had it. Like, if you create obstacles in your way, you're almost setting yourself up for failure. And so you have to make it so seamless that this is what I do. And it's not even a question. And so I'm moving into the new year as my schedule gets busier and I have bigger goals. I understand that those parts of my life have to be taken care of, because it's just not an option anymore. And so by not doing it, you're making it hard on yourself, because that's another decision you have to make. And so, ultimately what's interesting is that I think the secret weapon to life is self-awareness. And I am ADD to the nth degree. And so I've just created boundaries and people around me that, like, a perfect example, and nothing bad about my previous business partners, but I feel like a lot of people in my life previously, maybe I didn't know myself enough, used to fight me to be something else. Like, they used to be like, you need to do this. You need to be this, that, and the other. And there are things that I can do that can get better. I'm all about feedback. But now with my business partners and now with the people around me, my assistant, they decided this is what makes them great. So we're going to support that and figure out a way to work around that. And I feel like my entire world shifted, if that makes sense.
It totally does. I mean, I love that. Like, that totally resonates with me. And I think what can be really good is for guys like you and I to be able to, I'll speak for myself, for me to be able to apply that to the people I work with. Because my wife is very different style. Like, it wouldn't work for her that an alarm is going off and it's not like a wah, wah, it's a nice sound, but like every 15 or 20 minutes in the morning, this thing, it's like telling me, go to your next task. And it's like, oh yes, now I get to go meditate. Yes, now I get to go read. Some people aren't wired that way. And so I think it's important, at least for me, to honor that other people have different ways. Like my wife does, she's more in the flow.
Yeah.
For me, as long as at the end of the day, she gets the outcomes for herself, for the business, and feels fulfilled. Like, that's really the key. But yeah, I mean, dude, I'm the same as you. I love that.
No, I love it. And this conversation could go on for 9 years, but if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, if they wanted to find out about what you do, how do they go about doing that?
I would say happyjackyoga.com. In fact, what I'll do, I'll shoot you a link, Austin.
Okay.
You said something earlier. You talked about winning the day. I have a 5-day challenge called Win Your Day. Obviously, it's got some meditation. It's got a taste of yoga. It's got a few other practices that we believe in. It's a free challenge. I'll get you a link and share it with your tribe.
I love it. I appreciate that. And how do they find you on Instagram and all that stuff?
Instagram, Happy Jack Yoga, Facebook, Happy Jack Yoga, YouTube, Happy Jack Yoga. And yeah, man, definitely. And here's the deal. I used to say that I don't, everybody should find what they love, but I'm getting pretty close to feeling the certainty of, I believe just about everybody could benefit from meditation and some yoga in their life. So if anybody out there is listening and they're like, I'm just curious, want to give it a taste, shoot us a message.
It's interesting that interview with Jerry Seinfeld, and he was like, I think that anything can be fixed in this world with transcendental meditation and some working out. He's like, give me anybody and I can fix anybody. And ultimately, and I would imagine you feel the same way, nobody is allowed to be a client of mine, a coaching client, without doing some sort of activity, meaning walking, running, or working out. Because I feel like, a lot of people are very anxious. There's a lot of energy, or they're at work all day and they're not getting out what they want to. And you know what I do, man? You're gonna love this. So I'm an outside the box thinker. I get weird sometimes, and so I did this podcast on fun. I think that adults have forgot what fun is. They have bastardized the word and disappeared. But literally, I made my client put a quarter in his pocket for the next week, in his right pocket, and it was just like, I learned it from a movie, because I want you to think about something else than what you're doing, because we're just trying to change up some things. And it's like, sometimes, guys, if you went down Smith Street for the last 7 years, why didn't you go down J Street for a week and see if your life doesn't change, right? Do you feel me on that?
Yeah. Dude, and that's honestly, I got to take it. Even though my nickname is Happy Jack and I'm a super happy guy, I probably, coming from my alcoholism turned into workaholism, dude. And I love what I do, but I put in a lot of hours, and that's my practice now, is having fun. So I'll schedule, talk about Airbnb, just a couple of months ago, let's go for a month. Let's go. Just my wife and I, no phones, no laptops. Let's go have fun. Let's go just disconnect. So that's my practice, man, having fun.
Because ultimately you're going to show up as a better version of yourself when you're rested and relaxed. And so, I want to leave everybody with that. I love this interview. If you like this interview, make sure you share it with your friends. We appreciate y'all so much. And thank you so much, my man.
Right on. Namaste, Austin.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.